Now, I call it ant therapy. Let me tell you why. Probably 16 or 17 years ago, I was seeing a patient in our Northern California clinic. Actually, many patients that day. And for whatever reason, it was a very stressful day. I'd seen several patients who were suicidal, some other teenagers who were depressed, and parent-child conflicts. And I just went home thinking that it was a really stressful day for me. And when I got home, there was an ant infestation in our kitchen. And it was terrible. They were everywhere. There were thousands of ants. They were coming out of the light socket. They were coming, it seemed, up out of the floor. They were in the cabinets. They were crawling in the cereal. It was a nightmare. And I was wiping up these thousands of ants. And, you know, medical doctors, when you go through medical school, you're always making up little mnemonics or memory tricks to remember things. And so we'd take the first letter of a string of things that we had to remember and put it together. And as I was thinking about the ants and cleaning up these thousands of them, and then thinking about my day with the people I'd seen who were depressed and sad and suicidal, I thought to myself, ant, automatic negative thoughts. That's an ant. And just like my patients today, they're infested with these negative thoughts that drive negative feelings, which then drive negative behaviors. And so I thought, ants. My patients need ant spray. Or they need an anteater. And actually, shortly thereafter, I became obsessed with finding ants, puppets, and anteaters. Because, you know, I'm also a child psychiatrist, so I spent part of my day seeing children, and I thought, oh, this would just be such a cool analogy for them. And so I started talking to them about automatic negative thoughts. Cognitive therapists would call these cognitive distortions. And we have to get ant spray, or we have to get an anteater to help them. And then another thing I realized is there's not one kind of ant. There were 9 or 10 different kinds of ant species. And so I'll just tell you what some of them are. There's always thinking, where you think in words like always or never, everyone, every time. It's where you overgeneralize situations, like if my wife snaps at me. They're always being mean to me, which of course is not true. But if you have a negative thought and you don't challenge it, you believe it 100% of the time. So if I have the thought, she's always mean to me, well, that's pretty negative. I mean, that would make anybody feel pretty terrible. And then if I believe that negative thought, I'm going to, even though it's a lie, I'm going to react out of the thought, and I'm going to be mean to her, which in turn will become a self-fulfilling prophecy, because she will then really be mean to me back. You see where I'm going with this? Thoughts drive feelings. Feelings drive behavior. And I want you to think in the most accurate way possible. They're mind-reading thoughts. This is where you arbitrarily believe you know what someone else is thinking, even though they haven't told you. And I have 25 years of education, and I've been a psychiatrist almost 30 years, and I can't read anybody's mind. A negative look from someone else may mean nothing more than they're constipated. You don't know. So it's critical, if you think someone else is thinking something, check it out. Another negative thought is blame. It's his fault. And the most ineffective people in life, I have found, as a psychiatrist, are people who don't take any responsibility for their lives, and they blame their wife, their kids, their boss, their parents, whatever. I'm this way because you did that. It's not good. Now, I don't want you blaming yourself. That's not helpful. But when you take responsibility to make a change, whether it's with your weight or with your health or with your job, it's like, what is it I can do today to make things better? It empowers you, and you're so much more effective. Focusing on the negative. My last book, The Amen Solution, was a New York Times bestseller. I was really excited about that. But I could go, well, it wasn't as big as my friend's book. And I could take an event that was really wonderful. It's like a major, cool accomplishment. And I could feel bad about it. Some of you may know I'm one of the chief architects of the Daniel Plan at Saddleback Church, a plan to get the church healthy. And so I get to spend time with Pastor Rick Warren. He's just a wonderful man. And his book, The Purpose-Driven Life, sold 35 million copies and was the world's best-selling book 4 years in a row. So I could compare myself to him and go, well, my book's not doing that well. And you can see I could get depressed when I have a bestseller. Do you see how crazy this can be? So when you do something like that and you're focusing on the negative of the situation, it will really drive you to feel bad, and then, of course, to do bad things. Fortune telling. This used to be my hand, where you predict the future in a negative way. So if you saw my brain scan, there's a part of the brain called the basal ganglia that are often involved in anxiety when they work too hard. And mine, when I first started imaging, was just on fire. And it explained a lot to me, because I just used to have this tendency to predict the worst and was filled with anxiety. So I was the kind of person that if I was almost in a car accident, and living in Southern California, a lot of people drive crazy, I wouldn't think, oh, thank God nothing bad happened. I would play the accident out in my head, where I would see the car being hit, see my head hit the windshield, the car goes up in flames, and the ambulance driver doesn't get there on time, and I'm burned. I would just play this terrible scene out. When I learned about cognitive therapy and ANT therapy, I went, oh, stop that. So as soon as my mind would start to go in that direction, in fact, for a little while, I wore a rubber band around my wrist. Every time I would start doing that, I'd snap the rubber band to attach a little bit of pain with the sort of automatic negative thoughts, and it was very helpful. But fortune telling is when you predict that things are going to turn out badly, even though you don't have evidence for it. Thinking with your feelings, I feel you don't care about me. And then believing it without really checking it out. Feelings are based on thoughts. Thoughts can lie to you. Guilt beating. Now, I grew up very Catholic, not a little bit Catholic. I was an altar boy until I was 19. I went to Catholic school. And I always joke, in Catholic school you have to pass Guilt 101, Guilt 102, Advanced Guilt. But guilt's just not a very helpful emotion. I should do this. I should spend time with my children. To, I want to spend time with my children. It's in my best interest to spend time with my children. It's part of my goal to spend time with my children. Or, if I eat something I shouldn't eat, I can beat myself up for it or go, well, no, that wasn't helpful. That didn't really fit the goals I have for myself. Let's get back on track. When you beat yourself up, it's just not helpful to start wonderful, good, new behaviors. So if you make a mistake with your diet, you know the GPS systems in your car? So I have one in my car. And if I type in an address and say I don't make the right turn, it doesn't swear at me. It doesn't start yelling at me, you stupid idiot, I can't believe you can't follow directions. No, all of it says is at the next street, make a U-turn. And in a very nice voice. And that's what I want you to do when you make a mistake. It's like, I want you to learn from it. It's like, what happened? And what is it that I can do next time so that this doesn't happen again? It's a very critical point. In fact, let me take a little detour here. When I see my patients initially, I say, look, most people who come here get better, but they don't just get better. So I draw this little graph. I say, most people when they come here, they have good days and bad days, but they're mostly not that great. That's why they came to see us. And then we intervene and they get better. But it's not that they just get better. It's they have good days and bad days. We intervene, they get better, and then they get worse, and then they get better, and then they get worse, and then they get better, and sometimes they get worse, and then they get better. And pretty soon they get to this place where they have good days and bad days, but they're nothing like when they started. And here's the most important point, is it's the dips I want people to pay attention to most. It's like, well, what happened? Did I not eat enough that day? Because low blood sugar is associated with low blood flow to the brain and more bad decisions. So you have more ants, automatic negative thoughts, on the days when you don't eat enough. If you have bad sleep, I just talked to a patient today who had a really hard day, and what we figured out is she didn't sleep hardly at all last night. So people get less than 6 hours of sleep, have lower overall blood flow to the brain, more bad decisions. Lower overall blood flow to the brain, more ants. They begin to come out when your brain is not functioning optimally. So guilt's not helpful. Labeling. Labeling is very interesting. It's when you call yourself or other people names. When you label themselves with a certain term. He's a jerk. As soon as you call someone a jerk, you then lump them with all the jerks that you've ever known, and you can't deal with this person rationally or effectively. She's cold. He's an idiot. You do that with yourself as well. So you want to get rid of the labels that you put on people. All or nothing thinking, where things are either all good or they're all bad. And whenever you do that, you can't deal with a situation in a rational way. So one of my patients once drew these pictures for me. So here's a mind-reading ant. There's a fortune-telling. I love these. There's a guilt-beating ant. It's good to just have the visual representation of these in your mind.